And speaking of despairing, I mean, we talked about it on Thursday night. I talked about it again here last night about the response from some on the left to the death of Charlie Kirk, shot dead, of course, last Thursday, early hours of our time. And one of the people who got involved in this over the weekend was Barry Cassidy. Now, you'd probably remember Barry Cassidy as once upon a time the host of Insiders on the ABC. He was with the ABC for a very long time. Before that, he worked for Bob Hawke. This is a man who's had a long and distinguished career in politics and political journalism. But he seems to have forgotten all the basics of journalism, which, you know, usually involves checking your sources and making sure that what you're about to report is right before you report it, because he put a curious tweet up the other morning. He said the apparent shooter, that is of Charlie Kirk, was a white, straight, conservative Mormon from Utah who thought Charlie Kirk wasn't far enough to the right. Trump's analysis is exceptionally embarrassing and dangerous even by his standards. Right. So it is true that the alleged shooter comes from a white Mormon registered Republican family, but that's all he had to go on about this being the case for the alleged shooter. And so when he was asked, he later deleted this tweet because it turns out to be completely wrong. I mean, the guy was living with a transgender lover and had all this sort of stuff about fascists written on the bullet casings, etc. So Barry Cassidy, who deletes the post, is asked, why did you put it up? You know, it's just plain wrong. And he says, well, my sources were saying that this was the case. He then later reveals to the Australian that his sources were some bloke who posted it on X. I mean, like, that they had... So many people have just jumped at shadows to go, oh, my God, it was someone on the right, it was someone on the right. This is a guy who, as I said, has a long and distinguished career in political journalism. He should know better.
Yeah, he's been out of the loop for a while, Barry, so his sources obviously have dried up on this one. But
it's a matter of barbecue the only sources he's got.
It is part of a pattern of behaviour, and Zali Steggall issued this grovelling apology for accidentally liking something that was disgusting about Charlie Kirk. And unfortunately, what we have seen, and this is a prime example of what occurs when someone like this... And it's an issue that the left has constantly, and has become this huge issue. The left that are meant to embracing society, and we have to love everyone, except if you don't agree with your views. And then all of a sudden, they're finding a way to punch holes in the argument. At the end of the day, a bloke has died, young bloke with kids, and the hatred we have seen on social media from Australians and other parts of the world is sick, and I cannot believe it. And it's still happening days after being condemned.
And I think it also just demonstrates the arrogance of so much of the establishment media. I mean, for him, a retired, out-of-the-loop journalist, to go, this is embarrassing for Donald Trump. The arrogance to assume you here in Australia, not a current journalist, somehow have more information on who the assassin was than the President of the United States, who's primary ally just got assassinated, but you know, you're going to call him out for having inaccurate information. Give me a break. Of course you're not. Who do you think you are to know more than the president? It's just absurd. And it also just demonstrates how quickly a lot of these media types will jump on any excuse to attack Donald Trump. Anything at all, any slight piece of evidence. But of course, he's been proved extremely wrong, and I'm glad that he admits he's extremely embarrassed, and you should be. It is embarrassing, but we've also heard now in the news that they're widening the investigation into the assassin and looking at whether other far-left groups knew that this assassination was going on ahead of time. There are posts that have been put up. There was an account called Armed Queers that posts photos with guns and calls for queer resistance, that actually held an event at a Utah university near where the assassination occurred. And so I think there is a deeper trend going on here, which is the rise in left-wing radicalization and political violence. And it's going to be interesting to see the ABC types trying to wrap their head around that one.
And that's the thing, and I'm kind of grateful for it in some ways, that all of this has brought that to the fore, and, you know, people have just put their hands up and said, yeah, I'm an awful person. Let's show the world I'm an awful person. So you're now marked and we know who you are, thank God. And it has shone a light on just how quickly a lot of people have been willing to justify and celebrate political violence when it is visited upon their political enemies, it should be noted. Another example of which the half-wit musician Bob Vylan, who... and by the way, that's footage... Just bring that footage back up again.
Look at this bloke. This is unbelievable.
We were showing there. This is a guy going to the Turning Point Centre in the US, where, of course, they've been putting tributes to Charlie Kirk. And this guy comes along and tramples over the tributes and flowers. And, like, I mean, what is wrong with people? Speaking of which, I'll go back to Mr. Vylan. You know, it's not exactly the most original name, is it? It's a play, obviously, on Bob Dylan, Bob Vylan. He calls himself, you may remember from Glastonbury earlier in the year, was the bloke that came out and said, death, death to the IDF. So we know what sort of wavelength he is operating on. Now, this is a story in two parts. I'm going to play you the second part first and then show you what he's referring to. So he, it is alleged, goes on stage and celebrates the death of Charlie Kirk. I'll show you that in a minute. But first I'm going to show you the video that Bob Vylan puts out after he's been on stage. People said, didn't you celebrate the death of Charlie Kirk? In which he says, no, I did not.
Yo, real quick. At no point during yesterday's show was Charlie Kirk's death celebrated. At no point whatsoever did we celebrate Charlie Kirk's death. I did call him a piece of shit, that much is true, but at no point was his death celebrated. If it was, go find me a quote, go find me something that proves that we were celebrating his death. You're not going to find it, because it didn't happen.
It didn't happen, Mr. Vylan. Exhibit A.
I want to dedicate this next one to an absolute piece of shit of a human being. The pronouns was, were. Because if you chat shit, you will get banned. Rest in Charlie Kirk, a piece of
Your Honour, I rest my case. How can you claim that that is not celebrating the death of Charlie Kirk?
Well, it's vile and not for the first time, but it's just so sad that someone of influence could have that much hate. And I mean, I just don't understand. This has been a horror case, but I don't understand where this trend has crept in, that when someone dies or when something really bad happens to someone, that it's okay to joke about and to trivialise. Like, they may have been your worst enemy, but the great traditions of the world have had people be able to pay tribute when someone passes away and say, look, you didn't always get something right, however, he was good at this and good in that. Instead, this joking and this laughing, it's been driven. I mean, some of the things we've seen in Australia have been horrific, and it seems like we're almost, with young people, like they're outdoing each other a little bit, like it's a bit of a shock value thing. But it's a really, really scary and sad precedent. It's just sick.
Yeah. And this guy, I'm sorry, he is so pathetic. He's clearly on stage. The audience is cheering. He's smiling as he says, Charlie Kirk, chat, S-word, get hit. You speak badly, we will assassinate you, is what he's saying. He's clearly laughing about it. And then to go on Instagram and say, no, that never happened. If you're going to do it, at least own it. Like, at least be like, yeah, I said that. Yeah, I got up in front of thousands of people and I said that. It's on film. Everyone saw it. And this is what he did. You'll remember at Glastonbury, he started the chant, death, death to the IDF. Same thing. Next day, he released a statement and said, yes, I chanted that, but it's not actually calling for the death of Jews. It's just criticising the Israeli army. I mean, come on, you said it. We all know what you mean. Just own it. Just own it. But it does underscore, as we talked about, the radicalisation of the left. And that chant, talk badly, talk against us or against what we believe, and you'll get hit. that sets such a dangerous precedent, which says if you disagree with us, we have the right to go out and commit violence against you. You cannot sustain a democracy. You cannot sustain Western civilization when people think like that. But the fight for Western civilization continues as mass immigration makes people feel as though their culture and their way of life is being erased.